So in this lecture I will describe about the neurons and neuroglial cells. So neurons is the structural and functional unit of the nervous system. Human nervous system is containing about 10 to the power 12 neurons. These neurons are the structural and functional component of the nervous system. As because the neurons they form the structure of the nervous system, and the activity of the nervous system depends upon the activity of the individual neurons and their interconnections. That's why they are called as structural and functional component of the nervous system. So in this nervous system, the activity actually depends on the neurons working together. If the neurons do not work together, the overall activity of the nervous system will be hampered. So as there are many synapses, that is around 10 to the power 14 synapses in the human brain. Human brain is consisting of 10 to the power 12 neurons. But it is very interesting that there is another type of cell which are present in the nervous system whose number is more than the neuronal cells, and their number is about 10 to 15 times more than the neuronal cell, and they are called as the neuroglial cells. So these cells are called as neuroglial cells. They are more in number than the neuronal cells. Their main function is to provide the support, and they are responsible for generation of the environment where the neuron can act properly. They can maintain the ionic concentration of the environment of the nervous system. They can supply the nutrient. They can protect the neuron from the physical damage, or like that. Some glial cells they physically supports and orient the neurons and help them to make a right contact during embryonic development also. So during embryonic development, they also helps in contact of different neurons so that they can connect with each other by the formation of the synapse, and during development it helps in formation of the synapse also. There are some glial cells which are responsible for insulating the axon at central nervous system, and these are called as oligodendrocytes. There are some cells which looks like star. These cells are astrocytes, and they are huge in number in the central nervous system for providing different supports to the cells, that is the neuronal cells, so that they can act properly. So let us see what are the neurons. They are the basic building blocks of the nervous system. They can respond against various stimuli. Different types of stimuli can stimulate them. These stimuli are of three types mainly. They might be physical, they might be chemical, or they might be electrical. They can integrate with other neurons, and they can transmit the various impulses from one part of the nervous system to the other parts. So here are the different types of neurons generally found within the nervous system. So we will discuss about it in later slides. So neurons can be classified into on the basis of different features. Number one, according to the number of processes. Processes means here the dendrons or dendrites. So on the basis of the presence of dendrons and dendrites, they can be classified into 5 types. Dendrons are basically responsible for collecting the information from the another neuronal cell, and axons are responsible for sending the information from the neuronal cell. So on the basis of the presence of dendrons and dendrites, they are classified into 5 types. Number 1 is apolar, unipolar, number 2, number 3 pseudo-unipolar, number 4 bipolar, and number 5 multipolar. The apolar neuronal cell, they are lacking any dendron or dendrites. They looks like this. So they are mainly the interneurons. So these apolar cells are lacking any dendrites or dendron as well as the axon. Whereas the unipolar cell, they are having a single axon. That's why they are called as unipolar cell. But they are lacking any dendrons and dendrites. Here the cell body itself is responsible for collecting the information. There are some neuronal cells which looks like bipolar cell, but basically they are unipolar cell. That's why they are called as pseudo-unipolar cell. As because their single process has been bifurcated and it looks like bipolar cell, but it is a unipolar cell. That's why it is called as pseudo-unipolar cell. In case of bipolar cell, they are having a single dendron and single axon. And in case of multipolar cell, what actually generally found in the pictures in the different books, that it is having several numbers of dendrons and dendrites and a single axon. So these are the 5 types of neurons which are on the basis of the presence of processes, that is on the basis of the presence of axons and dendron. Neuron also can be classified on the basis of the length of their axons. On the basis of the length of the axons, neurons can be classified into 2 types. Number 1 is Golgi type 1, which is having a longer axon. And number 2 is Golgi type 2, which is having a shorter axon. So the Golgi type 1 neurons are having longer axons, whereas the Golgi type 2 neurons are having shorter axons. So this type of neurons, that is the Golgi type 1 neurons, are responsible for traveling a longer distance and thereby sending the stimulus to a distant region. Whereas the neurons having shorter axons, they are responsible for communicating within the shorter range. Neurons can be classified on the basis of the shape of their cell body also. Within the central nervous system, there are some neurons whose cell body looks like pyramid. These type of neuronal cells are called as pyramidal cell. Some of the neuronal cells are having cell bodies are having without any definite shape. They are called as fusiform. And some neuronal cell bodies looks like star. That's why they are called as stellate cell. So these are 3 types of cells. These type of cells are mainly basically found in the cortex of the cerebrum and throughout the nervous system also, but they are classified on the basis of their shape of the cell body. According to their function, neuron can be classified into 3 types. Number 1 is motor neuron, number 2 is sensory neuron, and number 3 is interneuron. Motor neuron, sensory neuron and interneuron, they are basically responsible for collecting the information from different parts or different regions or taking the decisions like that. So motor neurons are responsible for sending the information towards the effector organ, that is the different muscles. That means they are carrying the information away from the central nervous system. Whereas the sensory neurons, they are responsible for carrying the information towards the central nervous system. So they are responsible for collecting the information from the receptors, and from receptors these neurons send the information towards the central nervous system. So sensory neurons are responsible for transmitting the sensory impulses. Motor neurons are responsible for transmission of the motor impulses. In between the sensory neuron and motor neuron, there is another neuron which is called as interneuron. The main function of this neuron is to convey the information from the sensory neuron to the motor neuron, as well as this neuron also helps in taking the decision as well as the logic and analysis. And interneurons are found in the central nervous system itself. So according to the presence of the myelin sheath, neuron also can be classified into 2 types. Either they are myelinated neuron or they are unmyelinated neuron. If the neuron is having myelin sheath, that is myelin sheath, it's a fatty layer or lipid layer around the axon which acts as an insulator so that the information from the neuron cannot be bypassed through another neuron during its transmission. So this myelin sheath also helps in faster transmission of the impulse within the neuron. So neurons which are having myelin sheath, they are called as myelinated neuron, and neurons which are lacking myelin sheath, they are called as unmyelinated neuron. So here you can find this is the myelinated neuron, and this is a myelinated neuron, and this is a unmyelinated neuron. And the impulse propagation in the myelinated neuron is faster than the impulse propagation in the unmyelinated neuron. And within our nervous system, we are having three types of neuroglial cells. Number one is astrocyte, number two is oligodendrocyte, and number three is microglial cells. Astrocytes are responsible for maintaining the maintaining the environment within the nervous system. It is also responsible for maintaining the chemical environment of the nervous system and helps in neuronal signaling. It provides support to the neuronal cell from the physical damage. It also protects the neuronal cell from the invading organisms by forming a blood-brain barrier so that the invading organisms cannot enter within the brain or neuronal cell from the blood. So it protects the brain by providing a support which is called as blood-brain barrier. And sometime what actually happens, these neuronal cells also can do the actions as like neurons when the neuronal cells are damaged. These cells are the oligodendrocytes. They are responsible for formation of the lipid layer, that is a myelin sheath in the central nervous system. In the central nervous system, oligodendrocytes are responsible for formation of the myelin sheath. Microglial cells, there is another type of neuroglial cell which is basically a scavenging cell which is responsible for removing the cellular debris from the site of injury or the normal cell turnover. If the normal neuronal cell is damaged or a damaged neuron is there, that damaged neuron may produce toxicity within the brain which may affect the neuronal activity, and this is protected by the microglial cell. They can engulf the foreign particles as well as the dead neuronal cell, and thereby they protect the brain from the toxic effects of the dead materials as well as the pathogenic substances. They can also secrete the signaling molecules sometimes. So these are the different types of neuroglial cells. So they play a protective role. They support the neuronal cell from different physical damage. They supply the neurons with nutrients. They can consume the foreign particle and cell debris, and they help to maintain the proper ionic environment around the cells. Some glial cells communicate with one another electrically through the gap junctions, a special type of connection that enables ions to flow between the cells. And astrocytes protects the brain from the toxic chemical in the blood by forming blood-brain barrier. So these are the common functions of the these three types of neuroglial cells I discussed. So these are the book references. Okay, thank you.